vitally here with my girlfriend's accursed machine. It's actually not as bad as I thought. Well, no, it is as bad as I thought, as you can probably see. It's gouged to fuck. What has caused this is one of the piston clips has come off. It has taken out the cylinder, the piston and the crankshaft on this machine. So we have to get the engine off the scooter and we have to replace all of those parts. Seeing as we seem to be having a bit of a run of this kind of thing, I thought I'd show you how we go about doing that. We have the scoot supported from 2 bolts which hold the grab rails on at the back. Taking the wheel off, put a 22 on there, put the back brake, and then Bob's your uncle. And that should unscrew like that. Give it a wiggle. We've taken the carburetor out, the brake, which I've just realised I've forgotten to do, so I'm going to do that. So now we're going to have the shock off. And there she goes. The main swing arm, I don't know what you call it. The only other thing I've forgotten to do, which I've just realised, is disconnect the ignition. We've got everything disconnected now. If we tap this guy here, there goes one side. And if we pick him up and pull him out, down come the blocks and out she comes. Oh dear, what a mess. The new one is there and it hasn't moved. We have several things to do. I'll spare you them because they're boring. I'm going to be taking this off with these 4 bolts here. I'll be taking the ignition off and I'll be taking this off. This is a universal Buzetti extractor. And there she goes, simple as that. The stator off. So there's the stator plate. So we can have that off. Sealant. There we go, up. And as you can see, I had to lever that off. 6 bolts out of here. I pinch the rear variator together to give me slack. That gives me slack at this end. And off it comes. With the transmission off, that sealant there is extremely tough stuff, and the only thing that works, I've found, which attacks it, is terps. We come to the interesting part. 6 screws. Okay, top tips. When you undo these 6 bolts here on the crankcase, give them a tap first. That tends to free them up. 1 hot engine half and half a crank. Heat this side here. I would not normally tap it out, I would normally heat the thing until it's hot enough that the bearing and the crank just drops straight out all of its own accord. However, this crank is fucked and therefore I don't care. Some heat. And there she's gone. Remove these little chaps because you're going to need them when you put it back together again. Pop those out with a tool and just get everything really spotlessly clean. Completely knacked. And all of the surfaces and everything have all been cleaned of all of the sealant and what have you. Setting up your new engine, and the first one is how to get the crank centered. This is our new crank here. This is a dry setup, so there's no piston clips or anything. And what we're going to do is we've got some specially prepared bearings which are larger on the inside and smaller on the outside. Otherwise they wouldn't fit on the crank like that. They wouldn't go on. But just so we can get the crank centered, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these specially made bearings to plop the crank in to the crankcase. There we go, there she goes. And put the other half on like this, just like that. Allen bolts to hold the whole thing together. We need to put the cylinder on. In this case, no ring because it's a dry run and we don't need to make life harder for ourselves than it already is. And with the cylinder on, if you look down into here, the connecting rod, if it's centered or not, the crank needs to be pulled this way to my left to have everything properly centered. I've tested it, and with the crank fully to the left, everything is centered properly. The problem is that when you put the crank in, it's on its side like this, and it will just drop straight in. And I've worked out that this particular high precision tool is exactly the right width, so that when that is placed between the mass of the crank, one of the flywheels of the crank, and the engine case, the crank is in position. The other thing we need to do is to test the squitch. The squitch is the distance between the cylinder head here and this squitch band here, and that's very important. You tape a piece of solder to the cylinder head just to tighten everything down so it behaves as if it was all put together. Mr. and Mrs. B for which way your ratchet turns. Look them up. Splendid advice. When we turn the crank, it's going to squitch the solder up against the head. You won't be able to do that unless you have something to turn it with. In this case, I'm using a variator star, and there you can see that's the solder hitting. I'm going to go further, and there it goes. It's just squitched. And this value is going to be ridiculously high. The reason for that is that the bearings are not toleranced. They've been worked so that I could do a dry run principally for the benefit of the crank centering. So this is going to be way out. Once the new bearings are in on the crank, I will do this again and remeasure, because this squitch is going to be, it'll be of the order of, I don't know, maybe 1.3 millimeters or something. And you've got two squitched ends. So gives us one, as I said, it's ridiculous, it's 1.29. That's okay for standard piston and cylinder, but 129 for this kit's just wrong. What it needs is between 0.8 and 0.9 of a millimeter. I suspect that with the new bearings, which don't move, can you hear that? We'll probably be very close to the mark, but we shall see. We have to do it again with the new bearings on. I can now take the crank out and put it in the freezer overnight, having blasted it with oil so that it doesn't get rusty because of the condensation when it comes out of the freezer. And why we need to do that, I'll show you tomorrow.